Well, that's good. And most say that it feels good. But it's allowed to say if you don't feel good. It's allowed to say. I'll take this one question before talking about the dark night. In comparison to our usual retreats, this one is high energy, noisy, easy and fun. So why does it feel wrong? Why do I have doubts? Surely we must suffer to be liberated. That's a question, the last one. Surely we must suffer to be liberated. Or do we need to suffer to be liberated? This is a really, really good topic. In Tibetan Buddhism, there is this chart of 9 vehicles of Buddhism. And the first 3 ones are Hinayana, like Theravada. The 3 next are Mahayana. And the 3 highest are Vajrayana. Well, yes, I was going to make a joke that it's the Vajrayana Buddhists who made that classification. But it's true that Tantra is faster than Sutra paths. At least it is for most people. If you have excellent qualities accumulated over many lifetimes, then yes, Hinayana, Mahayana combined can take you to Buddhahood. But if you don't have truly excellent qualities, then Vajrayana. Because tantric practices, tantric paths are faster and more suitable for lay people. And suitable when keeping in mind that the culmination of Buddhist path, the fruit of it, is Buddhahood. That is important to remember. It doesn't mean that we couldn't get benefits, calmness, clarity, health, better sleep, perhaps even prosperity from Theravada Mahayana practices. But Buddhist path, those are, considering what the path of Dharma is for, those are side products and positive ones. But the goal is to attain Buddhahood, which is our own essence. So these 3 highest vehicles in these charts are, the first 2 are tantric, Mahayoga and Anuyoga, they say, like tantric practices, just the ones like we do now. Different formulations, different kinds of techniques, breathing practices, physical practices, devotional practices, cultivation of the mind of awakening or bodhicitta for all beings, mantras, empowerments, deities, guru yogas, mudras, and so on. And the highest one of those is Dzogchen, the natural state itself. And there are like methods that, put that natural state on the first, put it first. And from the beginning, prioritize it. Sometimes the practitioners of lower vehicles than Dzogchen, they blame that Dzogchen practitioners are lazy. Because, well, in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, there are the Nandro, or the preliminary practices. It's a vast amount of usually 500,000 repetitions of preliminary practices that, for example, one of the classic preliminary practices is a half a page, half A4 long mantra in Tibetan, Vajrasattva mantra, that is one of those among the 500,000 is repeating that 100,000 times. If you say it really fast, maybe it takes half a minute or a minute to say. Imagine how long it takes to say it 100,000 times. So I'm just saying this, that this tantric preliminary practices, even the preliminary practices before you get to the bread and butter of tantric practices, it requires a lot of time and effort and commitment. So while in simplest the Dzogchen practitioners shout pet, lift their legs up, and just are in the natural state. So I guess that I'm a little bit, making it a little humorous, but that's why sometimes Dzogchen folks are called lazy. You are not practicing hard enough. But having said that, open heart is a combination of tantric path and Dzogchen path, but we have the Dzogchen view as briefly explained in the Song of Vajra. We have that as the basis. We also have the natural-based prioritized first. So the question, this one has high energy, is noisy, easy and fun. So why does it feel wrong? Why do I have doubts? Must we suffer to be liberated? So as I was saying before, talking before that, to me at least, the point, well, it was at some point when I was younger and romantically in love with Dharma practice, Zen, Japan, monks' robes, Japanese architecture, scroll hanging on the wall, romantically loving it. But this was just immature, like a premature, immature stage. But then, when I grew out of that immaturity, that romantic love towards the whole thing, I realized that I really just want to end my confusion. That motivation. And that's what the Buddha was talking in his first sermon, the Four Noble Truths, suffering and how to put an end to it and to attain Buddhahood. So, as committed, devoted and serious practitioners, we have to prioritize that. We have to remember that. So that comes first. But then, the method, in this case open heart, it's a purposefully, well, it's high in energy as all tantric ways are. It's noisy because we don't have that silence. We don't do that. We could do that, but for the last couple of years we've had the retreats. We could talk because it better integrates with our ordinary life. If we spent a week in silence and then, left the retreat, as you know, it's sort of like it's like a shock there. Maybe not negative shock, but still a shock. Like, okay, I have to learn to, I have to adjust. But this adjustment is not necessary because you've been talking all week. Hopefully not babbling, not talking too much. So, noisy. The retreats in Finland are not this noisy, by the way, because Finns talk much less. But I kept an ear. If you were talking too much or babbling, I would have said that this is my opinion that you should talk less. Be more attentive about it. But it's been fine. And all that laughter and breaks, I think it's excellent. It supports the natural state. It does. We have been talking about pure joy, pure emotions, sharing in metta practice. That's it, isn't it? Easy and fun. Well, I prefer, when I did the years of Zen training, my knees and my body in, a lot of pain. Many of Dharma mind practitioners have told me that along the lines that retreats haven't been very enjoyable because of the lot of pain, physical pain. The Zen training wasn't, in that, concerning that point, wasn't enjoyable to me either. But the romantic thing kept me going. That determination and devotion kept me going. But eventually, I had to let it go. Why does it feel wrong? Well, first think about your motivation. What is your motivation to practice? That is always important to know, no matter who you are. If you are committed to some form of practice, you have to know why you practice. What is the goal? What do you want to achieve by it? Because if you don't, then it will create like unnecessary sidetracks. Might get confused. But I'm sure most of us know why we practice. So, personally to me it has taken years from when I was still practicing Zen, and I was just telling this to somebody that when I was still practicing Zen, if somebody would have told me half a year or a year before I was ready to let it go, that there's this tantric option for you and all these practices where guru yogas and all, I would have probably given a finger. Because I didn't like the idea of practicing anything else than Zen. But then I was kind of fortunate that it got really hard for me, Zen practice. It just didn't work. And my body told me by getting sick that this is not working for you. In a way, I was very fortunate because I had to grow out. I had to grow up because of that. So I probably would have had a lot of doubts of a path like Open Heart at that time. Dharma practice, I think, has to make sense. It has to be logical, it has to make sense. Also, tantric path has to make sense. And this is probably one of the biggest differences between Orthodox Tibetan Vajrayana and then this distant Finnish bastard cousin of it, unorthodox. Open Heart is unorthodox because Open Heart is not formally in any way connected with any lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. I have good friends who are Tibetan Buddhist teachers and have done long retreats. I received encouragement and even endorsements from such people. I have one very good friend who has also learned from me. Very good friend who is a Tibetan Buddhist Lama who has learned from me things, and I've learned things from him. So, but formally there's no connection. And that's why, Orthodox Tibetan Buddhists don't think very highly of open heart, because it's unorthodox. It's uncommon in that way. But surely we must suffer to be liberated. Suffer, endure pain, endure hardship. No, we don't. We still need to do training, and it will be at times very hard and challenging, because we are working with habits and tendencies, this selfing that has been building up for many decades in this life, possibly thousands of lives before it. So it won't be easy, but why make it harder with with some form of training? Why put yourself in a situation where you know that in 2 hours your knees start hurting, and then for a few days in the beginning of a retreat it will just keep going, and you will struggle between following your breath and the pain in the knees or the back. Why put yourself in that situation? Well, if you don't know better, if you don't have know-how beyond that kind of approach, then you put yourself in that position. But if you understand this basic view of the natural state and our deluded state, why lengthen? Why prolong our confused state? You know what is a curious thing about this asceticism? Yeah, asceticism. What is a curious thing about it is that, according to the legend, Shakyamuni Buddha woke up when he stopped his asceticism. But still, ascetic traits are all over Buddhism, all vehicles. There are these Indian Hindu ascetics who punish their body, like that's their main practice. Some form of Hindu asceticism is that they stand for 12 years. There are documentaries you can find from YouTube, or they have their hand in the air for 12 years, and it kind of withers and dries. It sticks to this position, and they can't use their hand for the rest of their life. It becomes like a withered, dry tree, like a dead palm. Well, if you want to try that kind of path, instead of a path that is easy and fun, go for it. But there was actually this why do I have doubts? Get awakened, use the 2-part formula. That's one thing that will give you some confidence. Then continue practice, get experiences, Guru Yoga experiences, continue Tibetan Heart Yoga, get those bhumis open, and confidence will come. But if you don't like open heart practices, you don't have to. There are other paths, more traditional paths. You know, in UK there's a smorgasbord of all Dharma groups and teachers, so to me it's not a problem if open heart is not a fit to you. So relating to this difficulty in practice, dark night, N-I-G-H-T, not knight, dark night. Dark night is I think it comes from Christian tradition, a dark night of the soul, some say dark night of the mind. And it means, I briefly talked about this in Dublin 2 months ago. It means that these easy periods when we have really serene and peaceful and nice meditations can last days, weeks, months. They alternate with dark night periods when it's tough and rough, when emotional, strong emotions and just sticky, nasty anxiousness, fears can be panic attacks, and it's difficult to meditate, it's difficult to calm down. These kind of periods, these two alternate, easy ones and hard ones. And they have different names for this phenomena in different Buddhist traditions. I think the term in Theravada Buddhism is dukkha nana. Dukkha means suffering. Nana, I don't remember what it means. But this cycling, easy, hard, easy, hard. It keeps going until the whole karmic body is cleaned. Some say that it would be possible to completely nullify the effect of dark night, this tough period, but for the vast majority it goes like that. Maybe there are a few people who don't have that rough ride, but for vast majority the cycling is like this. And dark night, so dark nights can last from 1 or 2 days to weeks to months, in some cases years. I remember this one Danish guy who is like a Hindu related tantric teacher. He woke up like in the early 80s, and then sometime after his awakening he got very depressed and received a diagnosis from doctor of it, and was depressed for 15 years. That's one example. I think the longest dark night I've had with like really strong fears, daily fears, just being struck by fear to the extent that my legs were like cooked spaghetti. Really not in the body at all, just struck with fear of unknown. You might not know what it is that you're scared of, it's just pure fear, wanting to get out. And then you don't want to experience it. Oh shit, this is really uncomfortable. You don't want to experience that. And of course, that habit of wanting to escape discomfort, it prolongs it. So the longest one I've had was maybe a few months, but it was intense. And then I've had dark night periods of from 1 day to maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then After that day or 2, 3 weeks or a month, then an opening happens. And then it's gone. Then it's again that clarity. If it's a bhumi opening, then it's like a richer, can you say that? Richer and more expansive awareness than it was before the dark night. So, yeah, dark nights. So for the vast majority of people, practitioners, it doesn't matter what path you're following, what the method is, you're gonna have dark nights. I remember this one American guy in the monastery, in the Zen monastery in Japan where I was. He was a monk there and he'd been practicing for 5-6 years, had been a monk for maybe a couple of years. And when I was there, he hit a dark night. And like he was really sincere practitioner, he was just a freshly ordained monk. So he was really committed and devoted, but the poor fellow, he was just, I remember him during a meditation period. I think I was working in the kitchen or something, and then my work there was finished and I walked to the meditation hall in the middle of a meditation period, and I remember seeing him sitting there. Usually in Zen training hall they have this, you have to sit your back straight and have the hands in a mudra, and they are very strict about it. And I remember walking into the hall and he's like waiting, for the death strike or something. I mean, he was totally miserable, a wreck. And he tried to deal with it, manage it. He tried to continue his practice, but then after maybe about 2 months of trying to survive, he had to leave. He left the monastery, he left the path. I think it was tragic that there was no tragic for him. Look, can you close the door? It was tragic from couple of viewpoints, that here we had a really devoted and enthusiastic practitioner who hit a dark night. And there was no knowledge what the dark night is. There were no specific instructions how to cut through it, with the outcome that this newly ordained monk, he had to leave the place. He had to leave the training. And people viewed it. I remember the comments that I heard from some others in that community were like, well, he couldn't pull it off. That it was seen as his failure, largely. But it wasn't his failure. It was the failure of the tradition and the teacher. With all love and respect. I have so much love and respect for that master of that monastery, because he taught me very beneficial things, but it's just that the tradition didn't have ways to deal with these things. And he wasn't the first one, this monk, and wasn't the last one. In US, in Zen Buddhism, they are kind of, many Zen teachers are psychologists or psychotherapists. There is this Western style psychologist. So they kind of have this, they try to figure out, there has been a lot of scandals, sex abuse, all kinds of drinking problems with Zen masters, and all kinds of problems there. So I think they are trying to figure out how to address those kind of problems. So yeah, I was giving examples of dark nights. It's said that Dharma practice is for healthy people who have sound physical and mental health. Dharma practice is for them. I have a couple of students who have some physical condition, who still wanted to practice, or might have had really severe depression. Like mild depression or mild anxiety is not a problem to practice Dharma or practice open heart, but when it's really severe to the extent that if somebody has been hospitalized before, or one of my students has this, I don't know if they know what it really is, but it's this kind of borreliosis related nervous system condition that manifests as different kinds of pains, and really random pains, and just lack of vitality, and even stomach problems, the food doesn't get digested and so on. So in those cases, there are some practices that sick people can also do, but it has to be done like in close connection with the teacher, so that it will be integrated, so that there will not be like overreactions, that it won't be too much, because Dharma practice, whatever it is, it can make the condition worse. If you are already you can't work, you can't study, you can't do normal things, mostly at home, taking medications, just surviving from day to day. You don't want your for example, if you were doing tantric practices too much, you don't want too much stuff. You don't want a bad dark night at the same time. But there are some practices, I said, that also ill people can do. What else about dark nights? Yeah, so maybe I should say that so dark night is just when you do some drilling with your practice. Drilling, figuratively speaking, you are expanding that field of awareness inside your body of delusion. You will hit some like, do you say, veins or areas where it's just like this black smoke or black fume, or like toxics release from your own mind. And that's what it is. I often use this analogy that when you're sitting around a fire, like a bonfire, sometimes mostly it releases this thin smoke, but at moments there is a lot of like thick smoke, and it fills the whole area around the bonfire, and it goes to the lungs and feels uncomfortable until it again it clarifies. It's a good analogy for dark night. Same thing happens. The practice, through practice you hit these veins, these pockets of strong fear, strong anxiety, strong selfing, and for a moment it's like your legs are cooked spaghetti and you experience that stuff. It's not dangerous. I haven't felt ever that it was dangerous, but it's certainly uncomfortable. Yeah. Yes?
It must be even after many years of practice.
Yes. Yeah. But if one has many years of practice under belt, it subsides quicker. And tantric path is, in my experience, it's. I mentioned this Danish guy who had depression for 15 years. He was, at the time, he was following a path that was not tantric. But then I think he started a tantric path, and that's what made it subside. So in my experience as well, working with Buddha deities, and that's again the genius of deities received through empowerment, because that, can I say, encodes that enlightened frequency, that vibration in your mind, and when you say the mantra, it becomes activated. So even if you have that black, thick smoke in your energy body and it gets to your breath, when you just continue to practice and relax as much as possible, rest and get sleep, eat well, it subsides quicker. Does it sound logical? Okay.
Yeah, just on that, you say that it's not dangerous, but what about people having suicidal thoughts?
Yeah.
That'll be dangerous, wouldn't it?
Well, I've had suicidal thoughts many times, but they are just thoughts. That's the thing with there is this good term, self-pacing. So in general, one shouldn't practice too much. Like I was saying, giving the example of a guitar string that is way too tight or way too loose. You have to, by listening to your body and listening to its messages, should I say? I don't know how to say it in English, but listening, just feeling what you actually experience. And through that, learn to self-pace, so that you don't, don't exhaust yourself. But yeah, suicidal thoughts, I've had them many times, really, really rough thoughts, the worst thoughts. But they are just thoughts. You realize that even if for a moment you're like, oh, this is so yucky, it's really awful. But then it's just appearing in the space. If you have meditated before, are awakened, have had other booby openings, it's easy to realize that they are just thoughts, just coming up.
It underlines the importance of having a sangha, sound sangha.
Oh yeah. Yeah, sangha and teacher support is very, very helpful.
And how available are you, Kim, to somebody actually going into that type of scenario?
Well, very available. I haven't I want to, those who are committed practitioners, who are Sangha members, I want to know how they are doing, if they are practicing. And if somebody at an early stage of starting open heart practice, if they want to practice more, they should ask me and tell me, because I want to know. I want to know how everybody is doing. So, yeah, I'm writing and answering emails every day.
Yeah, because we had discussed one case, you know, that you had on the Facebook site of someone who in fact was hospitalized or on medication and that, you know, so.
Yeah, I would have wanted to know about it, like before. I got to know about it 2 weeks later, and I don't want to talk about her personal issues here, but she had had severe depression before and had been hospitalized before. And I would have wanted to know that she's practicing so much, and I would have wanted to know that it had, you know, this anxiety, her anxiety had grown, and she had to be momentarily hospitalized. I would have wanted to know. I was quite pissed off about it, that I hadn't been told.
Is it desirable or advisable to actually say to people who are close to you that you are actually engaged? Because moods can change, you know, as a result of method, and most especially, I'd say, the open heart model. Now, it hasn't changed for me at the moment, but
Moods?
moods, yeah. Where one could be less outgoing or less talkative and feeling down or things about to happen or that. How is it advisable with regard to partners, family and that to say that you're engaged in this practice, and because it may be a concern to them if in fact one is aloof or withdrawn or...
Right. Well, yes, I understand. So I will give some more context to what you said. So sometimes, and I've seen that happen as well, not in my students, but in other Sanghas, people who all of a sudden they kind of become withdrawn. They might do some dramatic, sudden changes in their life, might cut ties to friends, family members, you know, entirely change routines, or do something erratic and sudden. I remember, or like having heard of some cases like that, usually young people who have looked for a solution to their problems, and then starting practicing too much too early, without support of a group, without being in contact with a teacher, and then these making inconsidered choices. What? Ill-considered choices. Okay. Yeah. But another, a good way to keep... The thing is that if this hand, this flat area of the hand, is awareness, plain awareness, Buddha nature, and then in front of it is the selfing, all the stuff that happens in our mind, whatever it is, you know, can be mild stuff or very strong stuff. It can be having an easy period or a dark night. And when it's dark night, it's kind of a brooding in its own. own juice. And in that situation, it's kind of the view narrowing down. So in that condition, it's important to snap out of it as often as possible, to get out from there. And in this, well, as you know, it can be done through simple shouts, pets, or what I found really good during dark nights is Guru Yoga. Because you are in the actual company of somebody who's fully enlightened. In dark night, I found that's the best. It's good to have, sometimes dark nights, you kind of want to have hot chocolate or, go to take a long sauna and 2 beers. That also helps. But what mostly helps is that company of the Guru. It makes sense, doesn't it? Again, if you're totally struggling, really struggling, and then being next, you're vibrating that struggling, energetic vibration in the mind. Then you get next to somebody who's completely clear all the time. Your mind is automatically affected by it positively. So I'm sure there have been these kind of overshoots. Is that a word? Or that overshoots, but problems like that in tantric teachings as well. Somebody who's just doing too much and just getting, doing it from really selfish point of view. I'm sure there has been such cases, but usually what I've heard are from non-tantric paths, from paths where there is no Guru Yoga. A few years ago we had this quite a big scandal in Finland in a Zen group there that is quite big in the country, where there had been people who don't have much experiences are accepted on 7-day retreats, where they are constantly in silence, and they sit 12 hours a day. And there had been like regular cases of people who go into psychosis. And there was this scandal because the Finnish Sangha leader of that group is specialized into psychotherapy. He's a physical therapist who's specialized in psychotherapy. So he kind of said to the teachers that this is not okay. You're not helping. People are going into psychosis and there's no way to, you're not seeing the signs, and you are, like he told them before that, it could have been seen that this is happening before it actually snaps on the psychotic state. And they didn't want to hear about it. You have no authority to say those things to us teachers. That's what they told. And it was a big scandal, and the whole Zen group split, almost half left. Yeah, quite unfortunate. I usually, I haven't had such cases on retreats, but I'm trying to learn from others' mistakes. So I usually don't accept people, total beginners, who I don't know. I don't accept them on long retreats. In some cases I might, if they have some practice history and well, our retreat format these days, you can talk, so it's not like you're getting closed into a bubble, which is a big factor in, you know, because sharing, talking keeps you open, right? Yeah. Yes.
Can I, on this theme, I mean, it's always been a bit of a concern for me, am I practicing enough?
Mm-hmm.
I have a Catholic background, quite a committed Catholic background myself.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that somehow fed into that. But I remember having a guest that ran the house one time, and he was practicing with the Zen group in Los Angeles, or he had practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was totally shocked by the hours this guy was doing in practice.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, how am I ever going to, ever sort of do enough? But perhaps I'll just put that marker down. Really, it remains a more day-to-day issue. What's enough? And I notice in my life that I do cut out a lot of social life and a lot of enjoyment because of, to a degree, because of practice. It's also work, and it's excessive work.
Mm.
And I think I probably got a bit of a general obsession for that.
Mm-hmm.
But it does center around sometimes practice. And so, I do carry a kind of certain guilt when I'm not doing enough.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Well, maybe I'll just say that. I think you're going to start it with.
Am I practicing enough? But one can also practice too much.
Yeah.
And I wasn't saying this in the context of overdoing it. Overdoing was what I meant with overshoot. So, I was practicing about 8 hours a day for the first 8.5 years. Until the day I woke up. Then I stopped all that sitting. I didn't stop all of it, but I stopped sitting 8 hours a day. I was practicing too much. I didn't know what I was doing. Again, I'm saying this with respect and love. I have much respect for all the teachers and traditions out there. They have helped myself to get to this point in their own way. But I was following the instructions that I received, and there just wasn't enough know-how, not correct know-how. I was still very devoted and practicing a lot, but not much was happening. So one can also, in that sense, practice too much. But, well, I guess you know if you're practicing enough, if you get your belly full, so to speak, if you hit to that clarity of the natural state, it satisfies you. It removes questions and doubts. So if you're still wondering about it, am I practicing enough? At least you should cut through to the natural state more. Okay? Maybe I'll try to address some other questions. Why do some practices require an empowerment in order to work? There are some Buddhas like Amitabha and Medicine Buddha that do not require an empowerment. Also, usually in Tantric Buddhism, students are given empowerments of a certain guru, like Padmasambhava, to practice Guru Yoga. But we don't have that in Open Heart, because any guru, any Mahasiddha can be approached by anyone, just by calling them. why do some practices require an empowerment in order to work? But then when it comes to Buddha deities, it's just faster that way. You know, for example, in THY we have altogether 24 different Buddhas. You could take each one of them and learn to recognize that vibrational rate. But it would take a lot of time, especially if you're a beginner, you have no clue how to do that, how to get it right. So it's just simpler to take a course and get an empowerment. It lasts half an hour. It's just much faster that way.
What is an empowerment?
Empowerment?
Yeah.
You were in Dublin.
Well, I know that, but
Oh, you're
how,
actually.
how is that different to just, what's the material difference? I don't understand. I mean, you just said, to me it seems like I have permission maybe or is it a direction? Is it empowerment of direction? Although you need to now focus on these particular bits because the vibrations reach that level.
I didn't get the last one.
Is it empowerment simply a direction?
Direction?
I sort of go that way. Go to this Buddha now, or go to that Buddha now, or go to that series of Buddhas now, because your vibration has reached their specialists. Their specialism.
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean. But empowerment, what it means is that a teacher of a certain tradition who has been asked to teach by his or her teacher or master empowerment it's not only that the teacher, just him or herself, meditates that the deity or those deities that are in question. It's not only that. Empowerment is that when the teacher is in that vibration of the concerned deities, in that vibration, those frequencies are extended to the group and included in that vibration together. And in that way, the energy body of the practitioners, students, they catch the vibration. They catch it. So those same frequencies in the bodies of students become active. It's not that the teacher is putting something into the body. It's just that the mutual vibration, your body starts vibrating in the same manner. And this detail is important, that all lineages need to be founded by Mahasiddhas. A samsaric being or a person, such as myself, I couldn't encode or attune the frequencies of Buddha deities correctly and then start passing it on. I couldn't do it. There's always a Mahasiddha needed for that. And in our case, as you know, it's Guru Rinpoche. So when I, as open heart teacher of Tibetan Heart Yoga, give first level empowerment of THY or second level empowerment or third level, it's this occasion where I do the practice and extend it to the group, that vibration, and your body-mind catches it. And then when you apply the mantras later in your practice, you get the same effect again. Yes?
Does it matter if you received you're receiving an initiation and you don't really feel it?
No, it doesn't matter. You will feel it later. That's actually quite common, that people might not feel much or anything during empowerment. Yes?
So have we had an empowerment in this?
No. No, on retreats I don't give Tibetan Heart Yoga empowerments because it's tasking. For the same reason I don't give Bhumi analysis on retreats and courses. I want to keep it separate.
Is it possible to do that online?
Yes, I do it online.
Yeah.
I do it in live also, that's the traditional way, but it can be done online. The next online empowerment of Tibetan Heart Yoga is 20th of January. The information is on website, the dates and everything. Okay, so we've been talking about doubts and dark nights and people getting into trouble through practice. Some being able to solve that trouble, some not, having the know-how, assistance to do that. Oh yeah, maybe I could ask about dark night that at one point, several years ago, I realized that it happens to everyone. But teachers don't talk about it much in general. And that is a bit of a problem, because if the practitioners don't know about it, and then you hit this thick mud, and it's nasty and terrible, you feel awful, usually people do one of these conclusions. There's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with the practice, or there's something wrong with the lineage. And usually take a break from the practice. It's good to self-pace, like I said, but take a break or stop practicing or change practice. But as I said, it happens to everyone, and the key is to keep practicing, but to be smart about it. Smart about how you practice. Self-pace. Like Luke's close relative is the world champion in boxing. And I was moving like this. And I was thinking of boxing. I've done a bit of it myself. Been in the ring a couple of times. and it's sort of like that. When you get tired, you have to know how to continue. If you quit in the middle of the match, you're in big trouble. So you have to know how to keep in movement, keep in motion, not get paralyzed, and acquire that should I say, stamina and skills in how to do that. And how you can learn is through experience again. If you don't know something, ask the seniors or ask the teacher. That's how it works. Whenever I've gotten into trouble, I've asked my teachers. Like I said earlier, that with Sivakami we changed 600 pages of emails. All kinds of questions and concerns. Also very stupid things that I asked from her. And she was often annoyed by my questions. As did Babaji, by the way. I remember this, like when the line of communication to him opened up. And of course it felt great, I knew, and felt that I was in connection with this Mahasiddha and I could talk with him. So I kept asking really stupid questions. And one point he told me that, look, if you keep asking these stupid questions from me, I will cut the line. And okay. I started to use my own common sense. Sivakami was also, she had this, I don't know if it's an American expression, but she used to say common horse sense. Like common sense. That's a good to end this talk. Let's sit 1 or 2 minutes.